My name is Mary Evans, and I oversee the wet chemistry lab and the microbiology lab, plus I do all the regulation. There's a lot of regulatory work in drinking water, so I make sure we all stay in compliance and all the water that you guys get is exactly as it should be. One of the reasons I kind of chose this topic is if you're in science, you get exposed to lab work, but sometimes that it isn't, you don't really see it as a practical, usable thing. So pretty much what I want you to do today is I would like to identify the purpose of a water treatment plant, what we do, and I want you guys to understand the connection between your analysis work and what you do with that information. Because sometimes as a student, it doesn't quite connect because, you know, somebody already knows the answers to what you're doing. So this is kind of a real world situation. At Paducah Water, we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We run tests every 2 hours. Rain or shine, the guys are out there getting their water samples to come in and do an analysis. I brought a couple of things. These are our daily operating reports. These are our bench sheets. There's a lot of information on here. This is what it looks like at the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, it's completely filled out, both sides. Now this one is Paducah Water in Paducah area. And we have 2 plants. We also run Reedland, the water in Reedland. Theirs is a little smaller because they're a smaller district. How many here actually live in Paducah? See, raise a hand. Okay. How about Reedland? Do we have any Reedland people here? Okay. Well, Paducah Water gets its water from 2 different sources. If you live in Paducah, you are drinking river water. Now Paducah is a little different because our intakes are on the Ohio River, but because we're at where the Tennessee runs into the Ohio, we actually get 80% of our water from the Tennessee River. A lot of people don't know that. If you live in Reedland and you're drinking Reedland water, there are 7 wells, so they're groundwater. It's 2 totally different ways of treatment for those 2 systems. A lot of what you have in river water, you're not going to see in well water. So our operators are really top-notch, and they know they can really do those tests and read those results and take care of business. Okay, first of all, let's see if this works. Oh, it does. The purpose of a water purification plant is to produce safe and reliable drinking water. The water must be free of disease-causing organisms, any kind of toxic substances, but it also has to look good and taste good. Let me ask you a question. I got 2 samples of water here that I took this morning. Okay? How many of you would drink this water? Okay, how many of you would drink this water? Oh, come on, let me see hands. Okay? So you would all drink this water rather than this water, right? This water I got out of the toilet this morning. This water is tap water with a little coffee and a little pepper in it. So see, it can be deceiving. I'm sure this one is full of bacteria. This one's just discolored, but you don't want to drink this. So it's not only do you have to get rid of the things that'll hurt you, you also have to make it look good. All right. What I'm going to spend the majority of the time on is the importance of laboratory procedures at our plant. You have to know what you start with in order to end up with what you want. And you have to check all the different phases of treatment in order to get what you want, because it can change anytime during that process. It doesn't just nice and statically flow through there and do what we want it to. It can change at any time. Not after you get all those results, you have to know what they mean and how to apply them to your water treatment process. And like I said earlier, it's continuous evaluation. We collect every 2 hours and run tests, and it's at every point in our process. So, this is just a real quick process for the treatment. We start with the raw water. We add chlorine dioxide for 2 reasons. One, it's a really great disinfectant. And 2, we had trouble with zebra mussels a little bit, and that kind of takes care of them. Also, there are certain things that need more contact time with your disinfectant than others. Giardia, Cryptosporidium, all those things that can really not be nice to your body. So we do a pre-chlorination, then we add a chemical called alum, and alum is a coagulant. And the most simplified way of describing alum as a coagulant is it acts kind of like a sponge. All those particles in the water, like silt or sand or any of that kind of stuff, all those particles, the alum will hold them together and create like a lump. They call it flock. And once it's in that state, it becomes heavy and it'll sink. So we add the coagulant, and then we go to a sedimentation phase. So all those clumps of flock will settle to the bottom, and then the water on top is siphoned off, and it goes into the next stage, which is filtration. You all need to be very proud of where you come from, because Paducah Water was the first in the country to have the type of filtration that we have. And it's called rapid sand filtration. Okay, it's 3 layers. It's got anthracite, which is an activated carbon. It's got sand as the next layer, and rock on the 3rd layer, gravel on the 3rd layer. But we were the first in the country to have that kind of technology. And I just got back from our annual conference Wednesday night, and we are still known in this state as being one of the top-notch drinking water producers in Kentucky. So be very proud of where you're from. Okay, after we filter it, we add more chlorine because we have to carry a chlorine residual in our distribution system because we don't want any kind of bacteria or anything getting in your drinking water. We also add fluoride for healthy teeth and bones. And we add a phosphate, which conditions the water. It helps keep the water stable. Then it goes out to your homes, and you turn on your tap, and if you've paid your bill, you get water. It's pretty easy that way. There are lots of tests that go in between here. This is a picture of our sedimentation basin. I hope you can see it. It actually is also our flocculation basins. They're side by side. This is really the first step. The raw water comes in. We add that alum. In this first, the one that you see closest to you, that's our flocculation basins. And it mixes that water. And it goes through these weirs over and under and around and through. And the mixing gets slower and slower and slower. So by the end of that basin, you can actually see the particles of flock in the water. The sedimentation basins are kind of on the other side, and that's where it all drops down. Those heavy particles float to the bottom. How we know if our alum feed is correct, never mind, back up a little bit. This is our filter room. After it goes through the sedimentation basins, it's brought back into our plant and it goes through our filters. We wash our filters every 100 hours. That way we maintain a very clean filtration system. So every 100 hours, we wash our filters. That's Todd. He's one of our newest operators. Somehow those got backwards. But anyway, the jar test, if you go back to the alum, this is how we determine if our feed rate for alum is correct. And I brought a couple of things. This is what our raw water looked like this morning. It's got a turbidity, which I will talk about in a second, of about 100 NTUs. So what we do is we take, this is our machine that we use. What we do is we take an actual sample of water that already has the alum added. And then the guys get 2 other containers of raw water, and they go 10% above what we're feeding and 10% below what we're feeding. And they simulate the whole flocculation process. So this is what it started out looking like. I had the guys get me a sample, except it's leaking. This is what it looks like after the alum has been added. All this stuff down here is the flock from the alum. Now sometimes they figure out, when they do their test, we can feed less chemical and get the same result. And what we're looking for is the clarity of the water, the turbidity. Okay? So that is not only is it a cost-saving mechanism or test, but it also, if you overfeed alum, it will do the exact opposite of what you want it to do. And it'll just make it very, very cloudy. So anyway, I can shake that up. So that's what it looks like, and it'll all settle out. That alum will do flock, and it'll all settle out to the bottom. So that's one of the tests that we do. It's called the jar test. pH. pH is extremely important in the process. Alum, at certain pHs it doesn't work. And so we have to know what the pH of the river is when we bring it in. And that pH can change, because once it hits the alum, it actually will lower. So if you're feeding too much alum, you're going to drop that pH so far down that you're going to be in trouble with the rest of your process. So we test pH. It also has an effect on chlorine and chlorine dioxide efficiency. Those are your disinfectants. You don't want them jeopardized in any way, because anything, you don't want any kind of bacteria or anything like that in your water. Corrosivity also. If we send out our water and it has too high of a pH or too low of a pH, then it's going to corrode our pipes. It'll also mess with our equipment. pH can eat your machinery up just very quickly. So that's the importance of the pH. And we use, this is the machine that we use. It's digital. It's real easy. Another thing you have to be aware of when you're running tests and stuff, several things. First of all, repeatability. You have to be able to repeat your test, because if it's a hit or miss, how do you know you have the right number? In the water industry, since we deal with public health, we have to be courtroom ready at all times. That means if we have to go to court for any reason, we have to be able to prove that our data is correct. So we calibrate, and you can see, if you see over the side, the bottle says 7 on it. We have a 3-point calibration that we run every single day, so that we can say we ran it, we got the correct results, it's on the mark. So we know that our samples that we take during the day are correct. So we can prove that. All right. Are there any questions? I kind of forget to ask that sometimes. Alkalinity alkalinity. This is another real biggie because the alkalinity, it acts like a buffer in your water. And buffers play a big role with pH. The higher your alkalinity is, the more stable, the more buffering your water is. So it's going to keep that pH pretty consistent. And if, you know, like I said before, if your pH shoots up or drops down radically, your process is going to be in trouble. So alkalinity is very important. Hardness. How many of you guys have ever looked at your faucet and seen the white stuff kind of growing on your, well, that's part of hardness. It's calcium and magnesium, how much you have in your water. Paducah water is kind of at a middle of the road hardness. Not too hard, not too soft. You shouldn't really see any of that, of the scaling, that white stuff. Reedland is a little higher because it is groundwater, and your groundwater is typically has a higher hardness than your surface water. We are very fortunate here in this area because even as close as Owensboro, they are a groundwater system as well. They use wells. They have to actually soften their water because of the geology of Kentucky. They go through limestone and they have, their hardness is really high, so they actually have to soften their water to keep their equipment running and to make it to where it's usable. Okay, if you have a really high hardness, it can coat your main pipes, so where you have it like clogs them up. So where you should have a 16-inch pipe, it may go down to an 8-inch pipe. And when you're wanting a lot of water, that's a big adjustment there. This is Jared Merritt. He is another one of our operators. He is running the hardness and alkalinity. They are titrations, so we look for a color change. Turbidity. I told you I was going to talk about turbidity again. Turbidity are the suspended particles in your water. Okay? State or federal regulations states that you cannot have above a 1 turbidity, 1 NTU, that's the units, of turbidity on your filtered water. That is an automatic violation. They come and they charge you lots of money and they make you do horrible things. So we don't like to do that. The highest your finished or your combined filtration can be is a 0.3 NTUs. This is 100, okay? Paducah Water says we don't want above a 0.1 NTU. And I have to brag on my operators optimization for the second year in a row, we have been awarded the optimization, the area-wide optimization award, which means that we have met our goal of 0.1 NTU 95% of the time, 365 days, that's a long time. We are 1 in 28 in the state that has met this. Last year we were 1 in 14 and other plants have come on. So our operators are really, really good. The majority of the time our water leaves the plant at a 0.04 turbidity. So that's pretty good. Reason why we care so much is because that turbidity can hide bacteria. And if it's covered in some kind of solid, that chlorine may not be able to penetrate and do its job. So we are, and it looks bad, you know, who wants to drink this? But we are very proud of what we've accomplished. This is Dale Hicks. He is another one of he's probably been there the longest of our operators, and he's running turbidity. The way it works is it shoots a beam of light through the sample, and then it reads the light particle things. That's a real technical term. And I apologize for this kind of being blurry, but I took a whole bunch of pictures and I never could get it to where it was not blurry. Back to quality control, making sure that our tests are reproducible and courtroom ready. We calibrate this at least once a month. Usually it's more than that. But every single time, so every 2 hours, we run secondary standards on here so that before every one of our tests, we make sure that it's still reading correctly. Because if you get too much turbidity in your water, that can be a major health issue for our customers. So they take care of that pretty good. We are part of a group called ORSANCO, which is the Ohio River Valley Sanitation Commission, which doesn't really equal ORSANCO, but that's that. Anyway, ORSANCO is an organization. They monitor the river from the very start up above Pittsburgh all the way down to Cairo, which is where the Ohio runs into the Mississippi. Paducah Water is the last station on the Ohio River. And we run gas chromatography every day because we're looking for volatiles. That could be, you won't pick those up in any other test. So we run this because we get 80% of our water from the Tennessee. What does the Tennessee River pass? Anybody? Calvert City? Okay. You know, those folks do a good job, but you know, accidents happen. So if anything gets in our water, we want to know so we can treat it. Also, we have all the barge companies just right up the road from us. Any kind of gasoline that gets spilt, you know, we want to make sure we catch that before it gets into our tap water. Another nice thing about ORSANCO is that we have emergency response, so I know if anything has been spilt along the entire Ohio River. So I can kind of guesstimate of when it would reach us. When they had a barge that was full of urea, it hit the dam in Evansville, right above Evansville, and I kept in contact with the Evansville station, so we knew exactly what to expect, exactly how to treat it, and exactly when it should be here. So it's a very good program. Doing GC is pretty cool stuff. This is Don Thompson. He is another one of our operators. He is running iron, manganese, phosphate, and nitrogen as ammonia. And these are secondary standards, which means we aren't really regulated by these. But we need to know how much of this stuff that we have in our water because it can really affect the appearance of your water. It can affect how your chlorine reacts. We need to know how much natural phosphate comes in to our system because we add phosphate. So we have to be able to compare those. The ammonia and the nitrogen, we have to know that kind of stuff because it will eat our chlorine. So I don't know if any of you remember several years ago, it was off the Clarks River. They had a pig farm that their waste containment broke. They had a huge fish kill. And all of that came down the Clarks River, went into the Ohio River. we were very fortunate. We didn't actually, it was flood season, so it, you know, sometimes dilution is the solution to pollution, but not all the time. But anyway, we had to be prepared because it would drop your chlorine residual to nothing. So that's why we take those. Dawn. DR4000, that was the machine he was using. I love this machine. It tests for color, okay? Depending on how dark your color is, well, it calculates that into a usable number. This machine does all kinds of things. I think there's like 1,000 different tests it runs. So this is from Hawk. It's a really neat machine. We also QC this. We run standards on it. So we're making sure that our results are reliable. Bacteriological testing. Now I can talk all day about this. This is Betty Downs. She is our lab tech. Regulations say that Paducah Water has to run 50 bacteriological samples every month in the distribution system. For Reedland, because of its size, we only have to run 10. So that's 60 tests that we are mandated to run every month. We run almost 300 because not only are we testing in the distribution, we are also testing our plant process. We need to know how bad the bacteria is in the raw water. We need to know if we're removing it all in the filters. We need to know what we're sending out in our tap. So we run a lot of bacteriological test. We use a product called Quality Supervisor. Love this stuff. It's pretty cool. See if I turn this on here. There we go. Quality Alert is colorimetric. What we test for is a group of bacteria known as total coliforms. And the reason why they're in this big group of total coliforms is because they are specific to the type of sugar that they will eat, okay, that they metabolize. So if you're a total coliform, you're going to metabolize lactose, okay? There are subgroups into this big group. We look for E. coli. Anybody know where E. coli comes from? What? I'll say it loud. It comes from the intestines of warm-blooded mammals. It's poop. It comes from poop. You have to have it in your system. You have to have that in your intestines to digest your food. But if it gets in the wrong place, like in your mouth, then it can make you very, very sick. In the young and the old, it can kill you. That's why your mama always told you to wash your hands. Okay? Man, y'all are a tough crowd. Anyway, this small subgroup of total coliforms, when it metabolizes lactose as well as a special sugar that none of the other total coliforms will metabolize. I met the guy who invented this media. He was really amazing. And what he did is he added a color to the, don't make me pronounce it, galactose, galactidase D, beta D sugar, so that when it was metabolized, it would turn yellow. I kind of said that backwards, but that's okay. He also, actually that was for the lactose. If they metabolized lactose, it turned yellow. If it metabolized the beta D galactidase, which is what E. coli will metabolize, and only E. coli will metabolize, it fluoresces. So, this is how it works. You collect 100 ml sample. you put the little packet of media in it, you shake it up, you put it in the incubator at 35 plus or minus 5.5 degrees C. Anybody know why we use that? What? Kind of, yeah. I mean, you have to be very precise. But the reason why is because this can potentially be a human pathogen. So you want it the same degree as your body temperature is. That's what you want to know what grows. Because if it grows really high, who cares? It's not going to grow in your body anyway. Or it grows really low, it's not going to affect you. But if it can grow at your body temperature, then the potential is there for infection. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Yes. Okay. So you incubate it. We have two different kinds. One takes 18, one takes 24. We actually put it in these snifty little trays. Okay. This is our raw water from the 19th. See how those yellow wells? That's all total coliforms. Okay. We have a chart that we go back. It's most probable number. You count all these little things and then you go to your little chart and you look up the most probable number. But then we stick it under a fluorescent light. Can you all see that? And it fluoresces. Those are E. coli. Now, if we saw this in anything other than raw water, we would be a little concerned because especially E. coli, because that is an automatic violation. That's immediate public notice because this can hurt you, okay? So normally they look like this, which is all clear and negative and nice looking, okay? But this is a great tool because it's pretty quick, 18 hours at the least, 24 at the most. So we know what's out there, and it's important to do because we do have main breaks. You can get a biofilm on the inside of your pipes, and if some of that breaks off, you have a potential for bacteria to be in your water to grow. Okay, so this is real neat. We also do something heterotrophic plate counts. Have any of you guys poured the plates and grown things on them? Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, the old way to do it is you have media and you have to melt the media and then you have to temper the media, which means you have to bring it down to a certain degree, and then you have to pour it in your plate, and then you have to put your organisms in there, or your water sample in there, and then you have to let it sit so it gels, and then you have to turn it over and you have to incubate it for 48 hours. These are awesome because these are called sim plates. Lots of QC with that other, because you have to make sure everything is on track. You have to be able to say, yeah, this was okay, this was okay, this was okay. These are called sim plates, and they are new. They're a new thing. What they are is they're just little plates, and they have all these little wells inside of it. And you can come down and look at it afterwards if you want. And all you do is you put your 1 ml of sample in there. You put 9 ml of the media in there. You swirl it around to make sure it gets in all the little holes, and then you decant it into the cotton here, and then you throw it in the incubator. And to read it, it fluoresces. So all you have to do is count the little dots that comes up. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. I used to have to count every single colony on the plate, and that was kind of hard. But anyway, so that's kind of this is definitely a new technology. The ColiAlert's been around for a long time. We are having new regulations this year, and we have to do tests for Cryptosporidium and E. coli. So this will be a very good tool to be able to test for that and to know what we have. A lot of QC work in bacteriological stuff in the lab. I think I covered all that. Besides what we do in the lab, we run about 300 tests a day, something like that. Besides that, we also have other regulatory requirements that we at Paducah Water are not capable of doing, either because the equipment is so expensive we could not afford to do that test. It's just a lot easier to send it out and let somebody else do it. Or we do, some of it we don't have the space to put it in. So we do a lot of contract lab work, and there's a whole list of samples that we have to take, and we have to take them at certain times. So it's a lot of, you have to be careful and pay attention to when you're collecting them and where you're collecting them and sending them off to your labs. We have absolutely amazing operators. They all have Class 4, which is the highest class that you can go, operator's license. They have to do 24 hours every 2 years of continuing education. These guys know, you're very safe. When you're drinking Paducah water, these guys know what they're doing. They are very conscientious. Their families drink our water too. So, they have a stake in what they're doing. But they're awesome. Along with the Area-Wide Optimization Program Award, we also belong to American Water Works Association Partnership for Safe Water. And once again, we have received their Director's Award, and that means that we meet the criteria that's well below federal regulations. So we meet those standards. So I'm very proud of our guys. And I think that's really about it.